find that my dua was accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this was an action carried out by Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam.
Radio Al Ansar, Durban, 90.4 FM, Peter Maritzburg, 105.6 FM.
Hey, youth of today, it's time to keep it real. Real talk, real issues, real youth. From mental health and peer pressure to faith, identity, and the power of social media. No topic is off limits. Join Sumaya Khan every Wednesday evening from 6 to 7 p.m. on Radio Lansar for real talk where your voice matters. It's your space, your story, your platform. Real talk, real issues, real youth. Only on Radio Lansar.
If you wanna look amazing, lady, you know what you gotta do right now. Cover up your beauty for the Almighty. You do all this for your deen. Sacrifice is only temporary. You know what you gotta do right now.
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, welcome back to our very third show of Youth Frequency with me, Sumaya Khan, producer and presenter of the show. Yes, it's not School Matters. Well, but it is Youth Frequency, where we take the real issues our youth faces every day. Adults often shy away from these topics, but the youth, the young adults aged between 15 to 35 need advice, guidance, and a space to be heard. And that's exactly what we provide right here. This is the aim and the intentions of this very new show, Youth Frequency. This is your time, your voice, your platform. So stay tuned, get involved, and let's make today's conversation count. Tonight, this evening, we are continuing. We're diving straight back into a topic where we just felt we have never do justice last week. That affects so many young lives. Are you high on substances or high on life? Well, we're talking about the use of drugs, cannabis, and recreational substances, which unfortunately has become the reality of, every day. It's everyday norm for a lot of young people, the youth today. But this isn't just about pointing fingers. We want to understand the pressures, the reasons, and the choices young people face and make, and most importantly, explore healthier ways to feel fulfilled, motivated, and truly high on life. So our future leaders, whether you're listening from home, on your phone, or wherever you are on the move, this conversation is for you. Stay tuned, get ready to reflect, and let's unpack this together. The use of drugs, cannabis, and recreational substances has unfortunately become the reality, and in some cases, the norm for many young people today. But this conversation is not about judging. It's about understanding the pressures, the choices, and the reasons behind this trend, and exploring how we can feel truly fulfilled, motivated, and high on life in a healthy way. Well, our in-house panel, same as last week, back here. We even got the mum here, all excited to give her 2 cents comment. Maybe I'll say, what is it now? I moved up 50 cents, 1 rand. Yes, we have my co-host Jamie, who's here. We have Brother Mukhtar, all the way from Rauf. He brought guests who have lived this ordeal. And Jamie, Mummy Bear, welcome. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Youth Frequency.
I'm so excited to be here and to continue the topic from last week. As we said last week, there's so much that we can talk on when it comes to this.
We spoke about stress. We spoke about peer pressure. We spoke about boredom. We also spoke about young married couples in the late teens, even mid-20s, or even late 30s, where they are partaking in this as recreational, and it's also causing problems. So on the ground, it's heading towards November, December, silly season. Parties are being planned, especially amongst the youth. Mm-hmm. What are generally the vibes out there when you are with the youth when you are counseling, and tell us what's happening right there on the ground.
So just to refer back to the first episode with the word that we learned, overall the vibes are everyone's just trying to get lit, to be honest with you. Yes. And so with that, there will be this aspect of, as we said last week, like, do so responsibly. And
Yeah.
Brother Mukhtar mentioned, like just informing, can you let your parents know where you are? So one thing I want to talk about is safety, guys. It's just sending the location or sending the pin or just letting someone know what's happening. I understand, especially with the youth this year, I feel like every year just gets harder and harder, especially for the matric. So we do get that they're wanting to let loose to a certain extent, but yeah, there's just a way to do it. And I feel that we have to consider also the topic. At the end of the day, this is detrimental. If you're going into it stressed out and not feeling the greatest, that's just going to be intensified, and we have to be honest about that.
When you think about it, it's normalized.
Mhm.
It's like you're going and buying an ice cream, as we just discussed, or a cool drink. So you might look so out of it because that's the trend today. And
Yes.
unfortunately, majority sees nothing wrong in it. We also have tonight, we are joined by some very special guests, young people who have lived through the struggle of recreational drugs, the ills of society. They've walked the path, faced, all the obstacles and the challenges. And today they're here to share their stories, with honesty and courage and reflection. Yes, we can learn from them. They have no regrets, or do they have regrets? Lessons and advice to offer, that definitely for sure. Not to scare you, but, guide you right now who's listening to us, if you are a victim of this, to help you make better choices and to show that there's always a way, to turn your life around. So if you've ever, wondered about the realities behind the highs, or how easy it is to get caught up in things you regret later, this is your chance to hear it straight from those who have experienced it. So I'd like to thank Brother Rauf from Rauf Mukhtar for joining us once again and just keeping it real. Last week, you interviewed the youth who were involved, and this week I see you have brought more youth. Assalamu alaikum, and Jazakallah again, taking your afternoon to be here.
Always a pleasure trying to help the community wherever we can. Sumaya, just to add on to what you were saying at the beginning of the show. So it's not only just cannabis and recreational drug use that we have to be cautious of. It's also prescription medication used in the incorrect manner. And, we've had numerous times and cases where we find both males and females, unfortunately young and old, playing around with medication that actually they shouldn't even have access to. And this actually gets worse when you have, unfortunately, people, adults who are supposed to be responsible, who will actually try and say, listen, take this drug to help you concentrate during your examinations. And then from there, one thing leads to another, because what it does is it creates a perception in the child's mind that I need a drug to focus or to concentrate or to learn in school. And then when they pass this grade, next grade becomes the same thing, and then the same thing. And then eventually it gets to a point where mom and dad are no longer giving this now. So where do they turn? And that's when they start looking at hardcore street drugs to mimic the similar type of reaction. And, it also comes down to the silly season, as we had mentioned. I mean, on our show on Sunday, we started the discussion with regards to silly season. And silly season is a simple matter of abstinence is better. Rather not go there and put yourself in a situation where you could get hurt. If you want to go out with your families and friends. Well, go out with your family. There are no friends. I mean, I brought Brother Muhammad here to talk to us a bit about his life. And we'll find that if whoever you ask, no matter who the person may be, in active addiction, in the days of partying, there's numerous friends. So many friends, you can't fit them in one vehicle, actually. And then when it comes down to recovery, and when this person's snowball out of control, there's nobody around. And then you'll find that it's the poor mom and dad who were crying late at night, waiting for this child to come home. Those are the ones still coming out every Friday or Monday or Tuesday, depending whereabout in KZN they live, towards the support group programs, just to try and make sure that, this child or this person gets help who's now an adult.
Do are you involved in a lot of counseling and hands-on? How common is it with our young married couples? When I mean young, I'm talking like from the age of maybe 18 or 19 going onwards. Someone mentioned, messaged me last week to say that they married for like about 3 years and their wife is involved in cocaine, but she'll never say. They go for coke parties. And he even mentioned that quite affluent, quite wealthy, but it's becoming so bad that it's affecting their marriage, and there's even a child involved. But again, everything is just hushed and swept under the carpet.
This is something that is, I wouldn't say quite common, because a lot of people that are coming from these backgrounds don't like to expose themselves. So you'll find that they generally come through once the marriage has officially been broken. But we have had a few instances where there were mom and dad who had come in, both of them being addicted to substance, and it didn't end up very nice, because the situation was we had to actually get social welfare involved, because there were children that were there as well, and it wasn't a very nice thing. But the lesson that we've picked up, or the thing that we've picked up or noticed, is, especially in our Muslim community, more so, that we find that if a child is misbehaving, if I talk on the side of the boys, if they're not doing well at school because of bad behavior, they move them into an ulum. And then from the ulum, they're not doing well there. Okay, what do we do? Put them in the house, give them into the business, and then eventually just marry them off, and hopefully, maturity will find them somewhere along the line. And this is the same problem we have with the girls. Because we always like to bury our head in the sand, and the biggest contributor to that is the stigma attached to having a person in recovery. It's actually quite sad that when the person's in active addiction, everybody will feed them, clothe them, spend on them, and so on, and look after them and go out hunting for them. But when this person comes into recovery, then the entire family, all of them, just turn around and walk away. And that's it's a big problem that we are having, at Rauf especially, where people come in from affluent families, good homes, and then nobody wants to see them anymore. Nobody comes to take them home. They're just left alone. And then what happens is the guys start to ask themselves the question, I should rather just go back on drugs because my life was easier,
Jamie, you got me there on the word lit. Mummy Bear, she said lit. Well, my counterparts. Now, tell me, from your counterparts, how would you convince them? Like, hey, dude, do you also call them? Or what's the new trendy word?
Could be dude.
Whoa. Mummy Bear, Michelle, we're not so old. How would you tell a friend, a counterpart who is just doing all of this for fun? I mean, because that's your friend, and at the same time they are attached, or they have a circle of a whole lot of friends who are also your friends, and you're not afraid, but like if you tend to tell them, don't do that, or I'm not going to do that, and they might, that 10 or 20 of them might just turn on you. So how, that's the peer pressure that the youth I experience today, especially in high schools, in universities, campus. So what advice, what would you do?
No, 100%. Well, I can speak from personal experience. Shame. Sometimes I feel bad for my friends. Like, when I love you, I'm going to love you, like, in a hard way. For me, love is not soft. You can't walk all over it. Love is boundaries. If you're doing something wrong, I'm going to tell you because I care about you. I don't have to scream at you. There's been an occasion where, like, I actually stopped talking to a friend of mine because, like, I just felt that the way he was going down, wasn't the best thing. And I'd had this conversation, and I had to say, I can't force you to choose better for yourself, but I'm just going to give myself some distance, and you can only pray for them. But one thing that I want to say is, if someone's your true friend, they're going to tell you when you're doing something wrong, and they're going to speak up. And so if someone's on this path of persecuting you, or making anything other than supporting you, and this is something that's detrimental, they're not really your friend. As brother said, a lot of the time it's not a true friend. I would just be honest with them, and just something for all the listeners to think about. No matter what it is in life that we're talking about, how you're treating it is how it's going to treat you, and the difference between medication and poison is the dose. So just be aware.
Being strong and being a youth, it's not easy.
Definitely
it's not easy, because you want to be like, and come on, I mean, we want to be out there. You want everyone to know, like, hey, you're cool and stuff, but you don't want to do this.
Yes, no, for me, I had to come to the space of realizing like I rather be, if I'm not going to be liked, I'd rather not be liked for the right reasons
Yeah.
than to be liked for all the wrong reasons. And I think that just comes down to me knowing myself as a person. And I would encourage anybody
Buddy.
the same. Yeah.
Mommy Bear, Michelle, how did you raise such a strong girl? Because, I mean, it's not easy, Mukhtar. It's not easy. I
Yeah.
mean, when being an educator and having, the youth tell you, we in this situation, what do we do?
Mm.
I mean, we rather, the saying is when you're in Rome, you do as the Romans.
100%.
Yeah. So what's your advice to parents, Michelle?
My advice as far as that's concerned, I think Jamie touched on a very important topic, and that is that she'd rather be disliked for doing something right. And I think my advice is not only for parents, but for the youth as well also. One of the biggest things that the youth are struggling with right now at the moment is that acceptance. So for an example, like you saying, we are all doing this, now you don't want to do it. And then that person is victimized, and the same thing happens with bullying. So this person's victimized because they aren't accepting to do what the others are doing, and that's a big problem. So they end up accepting taking what they don't want to take, or behaving the same way as their friends. And then likewise, the same thing happens with bullying. So it puts the youth member in a very difficult situation. So what do? Do I accept being bullied so I'm accepted, or do I accept taking the drugs so I can be accepted? So I just want to say to the youth out there, Jamie said something very important. You'd rather be disliked doing something right than liked destroying your life. So for me, I would say that where we can involve our kids more in upskilling them and educating them around assertive skills, and how is it that you can actually overcome peer pressure around these things, because it's for real, then I think that we stand a chance to save more of our youth. Because as you say, Sumaya, it's not easy being youth this day and age.
That's so true. Brother Mukhtar, let's know what's really happening there. Can you interview our youth which you brought along this evening?
Yeah, so just maybe a recap for our listeners out there. Brother Muhammad did speak last week. He is 18 years old. And he started interfering or playing with drugs at the age of 13 with Daha. And then from there, gradually moved over at the age of 14. So I'm not going to go and give you too much about what his life is all about. I'd rather let the words come out the horse's mouth itself. So, Brother Muhammad, if you don't mind telling us a bit about your life and how you ended up on drugs, and from there how you ended up finding yourself into recovery.
Assalamu alaikum. So just to pick up where I left off last week, I'm just going to give a short summary of what I was spoken last week. Is that I started substance abuse at the age of 13, tried cannabis for the first time, and my whole reason for trying it wasn't because I felt as if I wanted to be accepted by a certain group. It's because I just wanted to be different from everyone else. I wanted to be different from my peers. I wanted to be different from my friend group around me, from my cousins in my family. I wanted to seem like I just wanted to be the odd one out. So it wasn't a thing of being accepted, and I'll emphasize on that point, because my choice of using substance wasn't to be accepted by anyone else. Because the type of mentality I had back then, I didn't really care. Because before trying substance, I'll give you a short backstory. Like, some of the things, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it put me into a point where I was in a state of, I would call it a state of depression. Meanwhile, it was just me feeling sorry for myself based off certain things that were happening in my life. And came to a point where I was a bit suicidal and things like that. So I pulled away from everyone and everything. And not going to go too much into that now. Back to where I started on substance. So I started using cannabis at 13, carried on, started drinking alcohol at the age of 14. And by 15, I was already fully on pills and prescription medication, like antidepressants, antipsychotics, things like that. And eventually led to a point where I opted onto cocaine. And that was like the beginning of the end for me, because now it wasn't just about being different from everyone else. I went on a full-on rampage where no one could tell me anything. The life I was leading was very destructive, because that's the only thing that substance leads you to, is a life of destruction. Because not only are you destroying the lives around you, I was destroying my own life as well. And just like to correct the statement that you shouldn't be scared not to use substance, rather be aware. I personally feel like you should be fearful of substance because of the things that they can do. not only to the ones around you, but the things you're doing to yourself and you don't even know it. Because for me, while I was in that state of active addiction, I was completely unaware of myself. I was completely detached from everyone and everything. So it basically put me into, like, I would call it a psychotic state, where I didn't care what was going on around me as long as I had my way, and that was the end of it.
How long did you, continue on this path before you eventually decided to get help? And how easy or difficult was it for you to accept that you actually had a problem?
So to answer that, I didn't want the help at all. Like, I never decided for myself that, okay, I need this help, my problem is serious, because I didn't see it as a problem. It was my family actually that pulled me out of this and gave me the option: either you come off this thing, or there's the gate, walk out. We don't want anything to do with you anymore. And for me, like, the most difficult part wasn't coming off the substance, it was coming away from the life I was leading, because I tended to enjoy the lifestyle more than anything else. I tended to enjoy the parties, the false friends, basically just doing the wrong things. I found enjoyment in that. I found more enjoyment in running around the streets in odd hours of the night than sitting at home with my family.
Sumaya, if you could just come in here, right? So we always, and this is something we've noticed, in our support group programs as well, is that peer pressure takes the biggest blame when it comes to substance abuse and bad behavior from our youth. And yes, peer pressure is a thing. It really is. People will get pressured into doing things that they're not supposed to. But we find that a lot of the time, this is a choice. Drug addiction, experimentation, and so on is a choice. But one of the contributing factors that's now rapidly increasing, and this is my own personal opinion, is the lifestyle of influences. And this is not to slam any particular influence or anything of that sort, right? So look, everybody's on TikTok nowadays. No one uses Facebook. We're old if we use Facebook. My kids are sitting there, they laugh at me when I tell them I still go on Facebook. So the thing is, I was on TikTok some time ago, and there was a food review being done.
Yeah.
And the influencer, or the person that was reviewing this establishment, completely omitted the fact that this was a shop that sold things that we as Muslims are not supposed to partake in, right? And I'm not talking about alcohol.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where when the name was revealed, oh, okay, this is that type of shop, and it's labeled as halal friendly. Now, if you look at the way this guy advertised this entire situation and this whole thing, the way it was laid out and that type of thing, you think to yourself, God, this food must be awesome. I need to go and try this. Now, how many times does a person need to walk into a bottle store before they eventually buy the bottle? And it's something that we need to be very, very mindful of, because we need to, as caregivers, speaking of myself first, we need to be empowered in order to empower our youth. And because if we don't do this from a young age, you're going to lose them.
Do you touched on influences. I'm mentioning her name. I don't even know whether she's listening. Rihanna Sayed. She started her vlogs and blogs from the time when there was BlackBerry. And it was like creative classroom concepts and what was it? Delectables cooking. And she did a show with me at the fair. We have the annual fair at Durban Exhibition Center. And she said, what is an influencer? What are you influencing? What is the models? What are you trying to teach, whether it's the youth or the individual who's watching, to do good, to progress, to prosper, or just to watch you how you dressed, or it's about you? It's not about them. Or are you encouraging them to do something bad? And she's also an educator. And they were like parents who were sitting there, and even some youth, they said, they never ever thought about it like that. Because lots of them, their fashion sense, the swearing, the
language, the dance moves,
smoking, at vaping openly at 9 years old. It's a lot of guys who they follow. And that is so sad. That is so sad. If you look at it, social media has taken a whole different turn.
Yeah.
A whole different turn. Jamie?
Yes, I absolutely agree, and I find it also funny that you brought up the influences. Even with this, I tend to have my own personal opinion. And I've also had to come to a space of really looking at these influences and questioning, because, like, for example, you'll see online in the comments sometimes there's, debates of, oh, my kid is on this app, and usually from the influencer's point of view, it would be, oh, you should be managing your kids and not exposing them to this. But from my perspective, as you said, it's like, if you're an influencer, it's about understanding, and maybe that's because I'm just inclined to the youth that I have this opinion. But for me, my understanding was, like, with my platform, I understand that there's a whole bunch of people, especially kids, who could be watching this. So for me, I always tend to be very mindful, because it just comes down to understanding how humans work and how our brain works. Our subconscious brain is taking in every single piece of information that happens. So with influencers, you're bound to get influenced. And as you're saying, what are they really influencing you to do? Is it changing your life? Is it helping you in some way? Even if it's something as simple as humor, that's fine. But if now it's something completely different, kids are so they take in every bit of information that they are seeing. So I think if you're an influencer, it's important to be mindful of that.
That's so true. We also like to acknowledge all those who are watching us on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. We really, really appreciate that. You being part of the panel. Besides listening to our voices, you're also getting to see our faces. And these are our views and opinions of the guest and me.
I think it's also very important to note, and I said this on Sunday as well, because this topic did come up, and it's hard to talk about social media without talking about influencers. We're not slamming any influencers.
Yeah, definitely
that is definitely not what we're saying. What we're saying is the influence of social media in itself is where the problem does come about. So yes, there are people that do a fantastic job marketing and so on, and they make a fantastic living of it. And I hope you get more and more. But we need to be, as Jamie had mentioned, very, very mindful of what we're saying, because if you look at now currently, right, from experiences at Rauf, we're sitting with so many youth, youngsters under the age of 35 that are suffering with mental ailments. Now, if you look at this from I'm just pulling up some stats here, right? According to the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, there's 45% of the calls coming in are from the youth, aged 15 to 35. Now, if you look at this, right, and once again, everyone says cannabis helps me calm down and does this to me and it keeps me mellow and I'm able to study and so on and so on. It causes depression and some of the drugs that the kids are taking causes depression and psychosis and paranoia. And now, you sit to the situation where you have a child, like, for example, now when we had the show for the exam preparation and so on, where kids are taking certain medication, whether it be prescription or hardcore street drugs, and they think that this helps them, to study and concentrate and so on and so on. And then when you look at the long-term effects of these drugs, it actually makes you more, for lack of a better word, less intelligent, because you end up losing memory. You end up with memory loss and depression, and it actually brings out in you things that were there but you didn't know was there. This one dad keeps coming into our support group program for his son, and he always says to us that his son has the best behavior. He's the most well-behaved person around, and this boy obviously was on some very hardcore substances. And my constant reply to him is, your son is happy now, your son is well behaved now, but when he goes into a state of paranoia or psychosis, are you going to be able to control him? Because we've had instances where guys are shot into the back seats of their car. We've had instances where people have started hearing things and jumping out of cars because they're seeing things on the roads. And this is the situation that we're living in. And I think the biggest challenge that we have, apart from the fact that the youngsters are playing around with a lot of weird and wonderful drugs, is we're leading into a generation which will end up with a lot of mental ailments because of the use of these drugs and the dependence that sometimes us as caregivers also create this dependence. It's also because of that the children are now being bred into believing that if there's no pill to help me, I can't survive.
That's so true. Would you like to ask Brother Mohammed your take on that, where you become dependent, the youth especially?
Yeah, for me, like, I'll speak from personal experience. I was fully dependent on the substance, because without it, just from the withdrawals alone, especially the physical withdrawals of cocaine, there is something where, like, once you're down and out, you go into a full state of depression where, like, honestly, it brings about like suicidal state, because that's what I went through personally. and tried using cannabis to try maybe numb it down, numb the feelings, tried taking antidepressants, antipsychotics. I was basically mixing everything, which was just making it worse in the end, because that's how you end off. You can't find a substance that works to try maybe mellow things down. So you start using everything else together, expecting it to work. Meanwhile, you just go mad. Like there's nothing you can do about it. You try the same thing repeatedly. You just go insane because there's nothing you can do, but you're still trying to do something.
Yeah. Well, we'll be taking a short ad break and we will get back to Youth Frequency.
Meet you. Pay us a visit. Radio Al Ansar.
Plan your dream holiday with the specialist, World of Travel, as we pride ourselves in offering you the best in Hajj and Umrah. We also offer travel packages to the Middle East, Far East, and many more exotic destinations. Call our professional travel consultants now on 031 20 8877 or view our website www.worldoftravel.co.za. Visit us at 44 Crescent Street as memorable journeys begin with World of Travel by Irshad Malik.
Assalamu alaikum. Every single Muslim has at some point or the other made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something that they needed or wanted. And whilst we know that we can make dua at any time, there are certain occasions and moments and even places where dua is more likely to be accepted. And we learn this from the ahadith of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. Wednesday holds one of those times when dua is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sayyidina Jabir radiallahu anh mentioned that once Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam made dua on a Monday, and he continued making dua the following day, which was Tuesday, and he continued on the following day, which was Wednesday. And his dua was accepted on the Wednesday. And it was accepted specifically during the time between Dhuhr and Asr. So it was between these two salah that the dua of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam was accepted. So this Sahabi, Sayyidina Jabir radiallahu an, he decided that he would also make dua during the same time. So he goes on to mention that I used to wait for this time to make my dua. So apart from making dua throughout the week, if he had any special needs or anything which was something that he truly yearned for, then he would wait for this moment on the Wednesday to make dua. And then further on, he goes to say that whenever I did this, I would find that my dua was accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this was an action carried out by Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. And after that, this Sahabi testifies that when I made dua during this time, I found that my dua was accepted. There are many scholars of hadith who recommend this time if a person has any urgent need, if he has something that he is truly yearning for, if he has something which he has been making dua for a long time, and he wants to make dua in a time or place where dua is accepted, then that person should make dua on a Wednesday between Dhuhr and Asr.
At Techstar, get Toilet Duck Active 750 ml. Take 5 for 100 rand. Or Dove Soap, get 4 90 grams. Take 2 for 100 rand. Offers valid until 9th November 2025. Only at Chepstow, Mount Edgecombe, Durban CBD and Sparks Road branches. T's and C's apply.
Gaza needs your support more than ever. Homes have been shattered and families have lost everything. With your support, our teams are delivering clean water tankers, feeding the hungry, and assisting orphans who have no one left. Let us give Gaza whatever help we can. African Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring. Radio Al Ansar.
Man, I be man, I be man, I be man. Man, I be man, I be man, I be man. Man, I be man, I be man, I be man. Was the greatest man that ever lived.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Youth Frequency. We're keeping it real. We are here in studio with Jamie, with Mukhtar, with Michelle, Mohammed, and a whole lot of other guests in studio. We are trying to help, advise, figure out. No one's judging. We're just keeping it real. We were talking about, are you high on substances or high on life? You mentioned something off air about stats.
Yeah, so I had these stats last week, but I just tried to refresh them again this week. So, in South Africa, right, treatment centers across Africa actually, nearly 1/3 of clients are under the age of 25. Right. Another one is dependency is starting in pre-teen years. This is statistically speaking. Across young people aged 10 to 24 in Southern Africa, 1 in 7 are estimated to use some sort of illicit substance. In a learner survey, almost 1 in 6 reported having tried cannabis at some point, and 1 in 12 in the past month. And as I mentioned the previous one earlier, nearly half of the calls to a national depression helpline in 2024 came from youth aged 13 to 35. So those are some of the stats that we're dealing with now. And you must know these stats, this is only what's recorded and what's reported.
Exactly.
Because there's tons of youth out there that can't gain access to these facilities purely because of their age. Legally speaking, you can't take a person in under the age of 18. So this information is now obviously very underrepresented. And apart from that, there's also, as we were discussing during the ad break, the amount of parents that actually just turn a blind eye. Because, we've had instances where parents will hear that something is going on, and the first response is, Makab can never be my child. You are just jealous of the fact that my child lives in this house and your child lives there, type of situation.
That's always the case. You wonder, it's always the case. Mohammed, advice to, as Jamie, I tease and she teases me, counterparts, who are going through exactly what you have went through. And especially those, lots of them are in denial.
Could you just elaborate on your question a bit?
Just, I'm 21 years old. I'm doing this. It's been 2 years. I'm in denial. I'm going to stop it eventually. But I can't. But I'm in denial.
I think, Mohammed, if you were to give advice to anybody, what would the one piece of advice be?
For me, it would be like, if you are having a problem or a challenge and you're not on substances as yet, rather speak to someone and let it out there. Because that's something that I refused to do because I was scared of certain things that are happening. But for me, it's just to get it open. Because something that Rauf program teaches us is to be completely transparent. It's total honesty and sincerity. And why I was confused on your question, if they're in denial, because when you're in denial, you don't know that you're in denial.
Yeah.
So you can't come out of your problem whilst in denial because you don't even acknowledge that you have a problem. That's how I was a bit confused on your question, using that term denial.
Denial.
And not knowing it correctly.
It's like, you think, no, it's not me. I can stop it. But you don't realize how deep you've gone in it. Michelle, you're a parent and we all are parents. Has times really changed?
They have a lot, Sumaya. But what I find working with the youth as well, times have changed in a sense of when we were little, we were very occupied with things like sports, and our parents took us to things like music festivals. We went to family movies. We would do sports openly on the grounds, Nowadays, I think managing the generational gaps are very important, and understanding that kids become certain ways because of the era that they're born in is also another education that parents need to educate themselves in. So I'll give you an example. There's certain age groups that when they were born, remember when our country changed for the better and they learned that there's freedom, and you'll find that generation, I'll just use them as an example, believe that they are free to do certain things or free to, take certain actions, etc. So when we are born and what's currently happening in the world does affect how a child thinks and how they behave. So us as parents, if we also start to educate ourselves, it helps us to understand our kids better and then put certain things in place. First of all, you got to understand your child. Second of all, how is it that you as a parent are willing to bridge that gap between you and your child and come up with certain activities that are going to occupy them. Because as you guys are saying, you can only take care of a child or take them in once they're 18. What's happening to those other younger kids who are bored, and they aren't involved in those sort of things that we were involved in? So they end up sitting with their friends and then they start trying substances and then they start misbehaving in certain ways. So as parents, I do think that we have work to do. And yes, there are resources available, but it's for us to take that step forward and say, I want to educate myself and meet my child halfway. I'm not saying we're fully responsible for everything that our children do, but what are we doing as parents to ensure that we've at least tried to meet them there?
Jamie, as you know, as Brother Mukhtar mentioned, a lot of them are studying with the vape in one hand. What is it? I don't want to say the word, just about saying it's out. Zol, Dhaka, marijuana, weed. What you want to tell them?
It's as we've discussed, and I feel Brother Mukhtar brought it up, and it was something that also Brother Muhammad mentioned when he mentioned, rather being afraid of it. I think we can say ignorance is bliss, but I don't believe that's true. I feel you rather understand the reality of this, and yes, we're all educated, and yes, we all know, for example, drugs are bad, but it's not unless you talk to someone in that situation and you realize how detrimental it can actually be, and you look at the rawness of it, that I think they really, really understand. So I just want all to say, don't be stubborn, man. You don't always have to learn things the hard way. And I feel the youth, because we are so caught up in wanting to do things our own way and wanting to, become a person and wanting to be understood, we can tend to learn things the hard way, and that's not always necessary.
Brother Mukhtar, for the parent out there is hoping we can have a 24-hour unlimited chat pick up, and you're going to pick up the phone to assist us. What you want to tell them?
So we don't call parents in our program. We call the caregivers.
Oh, I thought monsters.
No, they're called caregivers. Right? And the reason for that is because caregivers are there to give care. And a caregiver can only give care if they're qualified enough to do that. So empowerment is very, very important. But then also remember, from an Islamic point of view as well, we are responsible for our children, no matter what they do. Until they reach the age of maturity, they'll always be our responsibility. And that is something that we as Muslims need to understand, that no matter how far or how old our kids may be, at the end of the day, it is our right and our responsibility to ensure that they grow up in a manner which is appeasing to us.
So point blank, you said it the way it is, you can whip them.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, that's up for another debate. Well, guys, I'd like to thank all of you all, just being part here, keeping it real. And, our listeners out there, those are listening who are struggling, there's hope because of you being here. So Jamie, Mukhtar, Michelle, Mohammed, and everybody, Jazakallah once again. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of Youth Frequency, a touching, emotional, hardcore truth experience about substance abuse, continued from last week. As I always say, we are not here to judge anyone. We are here to learn from real stories, real, experiences, and real courage, so that we don't repeat the same mistakes again and again and again. When you're in it, denial becomes normal, but awareness gives us the change to break free. So tune into truth and rise into purpose. Your story and our story and everyone's story matters. Your future matters. Youth Frequency, keeping it real. Assalamu alaikum.
Youth of today, it's time to keep it real. Real talk, real issues, real youth. From mental health and peer pressure to